Bills Mafia. On today's Air Raid Hour pregame, we will be breaking down what we expect to see from the Bills this afternoon as they take on the Los Angeles Rams. Injury updates, key matchups, our pregame superlatives are all coming up. But first,
Welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour Cover One Buffalo Bills pregame show. Today, the Buffalo Bills take on the Los Angeles Rams. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me on Twitter at the Bills Guys. Joined as always by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. Chat's already blowing up. We got Scott Blakely coming in saying, love the morning show, guys. Thanks for being here. And yes, we've sort of settled into our 8 a.m. on these Sunday games time slot here. I think it works best for most people because the pregame shows that we were doing directly leading into the games, while that had the awesome ability for us to discuss the inactive list as the inactive list dropped, it also didn't give everybody a chance to really watch the show. So this one here, 8 a.m., you can watch it live at 8 a.m. if you're awake, over your coffee, over your breakfast. And if not, you got hours to catch up on it before kickoff. So thank you for joining us live, and thank you for anyone who may be listening on demand here.
Yeah, it's awesome. And thank you. Special thank you to Daniel Kaberka, who got me this new Bills hat that I'm wearing for the Air Raid Hour today. You cannot apparently find these on the NFL shop. This certain hat is in organization only. So he won it, or he got it from some promotion, and him and I connected on the Discord chat through the One Pass with the One Pass members. And yeah, so this will be my new gear for the show, which I'm appreciating.
That is a nice hat. Is that like the Travis Matthew one with that circle logo, or is it just kind of like a knockoff of the Travis Matthew?
No, it's a new era, but it's got it's one McDermott wears. You see him wear it a lot.
Yeah, the string thing is, the NFL hats this year have the string, and a lot of people are going to the string across the front. And I don't know what it is about it, but I love those hats. So that's a nice hat you got right there.
I appreciate that.
Just to sort of get into it before we get into like the weather, and which isn't a factor today at all, or the injury lists or the matchups, I think this is a good test for the Buffalo Bills today, because this Rams team is finally healthy. There was a point in this season where the Rams were so dinged up and they got off to a slow start that people were saying it's time for this team to blow it up. It's time for this team to sell. But as the Rams seemingly almost always do, they are now healthy. They are now ready for the stretch run. And in my opinion, this is a playoff caliber team the Buffalo Bills are playing. Therefore, this is a playoff caliber test. So a good measuring stick for the Bills in terms of, is this team ready for the postseason?
Really good measuring stick. And Sean McVay's sort of tenure as the Rams coach is kind of interesting, right? He had the very early success with them, won the Super Bowl very early in his tenure with that team after the big trade to send Goff to Detroit. They bring in Matthew Stafford. And then since then, they've been kind of like middling around. Like, you wonder what the future was for Sean McVay at one point. He's still there. And so this team, whenever people seem to kind of write them off, just find a way to kind of put themselves in the mix. And they were a playoff team a year ago. They certainly look like they could be a playoff team again this year. With the way that NFC West is shaking out, it would seem that they will have to win that division if they want to get in the playoffs, but you never know. And that division is really tight right now. The Seahawks play the Cardinals today, so one of those teams is going to lose. And you just have to respect the Sean McVay coach team, in my opinion. He's still one of the best in the league, and he really gets the most out of his teams. And today will be a good test for the Bills. Last time we saw this team was an opening week game a couple years ago. So more, I guess, under their belts this time around, more tape to watch from each side, and it'll be a fun matchup today. And I find myself, and we talked about this before coming on, like I find myself kind of rooting for the Rams at times. I like that team.
Mhm.
I like Sean McVay, and not really like a conflicting rooting interest with them being in the NFC West. But obviously today, we'll want the Bills to win.
Yeah, I could listen to Sean McVay talk about football all day, and I love some of the way the Rams social media team covers and approaches like the draft and stuff, and just hearing what Les Snead and Sean McVay, how open they are about their team building and their drafting and all the stuff they do surrounding that. Like, as you know, this show is very draft based in the off season. Their content is gold, and I could listen to Sean McVay talk about football all day. But Scott Blakely coming in saying cup of coffee on me with a super chat. Thank you, Scott. Always appreciate you. Always appreciate everyone in the comment section. Speaking of Sean McVay and Sean McDermott hired the same exact offseason. So these two guys are kind of tied together a little bit. McVay bested Sean McDermott for Coach of the Year in 2017. I mean, Sean McDermott broke a 17-year playoff drought, but not win Coach of the Year, when typically that's what wins you Coach of the Year, because of that meteoric quick ascension of Sean McVay and the LA Rams. McVay also has a ring. Sean McDermott does not with the LA Rams, but McDermott is 83-43 compared to McVay's 76-51. And Sean McDermott is 2-0 head to head against Sean McVay. So a little bit going in McDermott's favor here.
A little bit. And yeah, I remember that wild game with the COVID year, right? Where there was no fans in the stands. I think it was, where there was that
Tyler Croft catch.
The Tyler Croft catch that was an interception. And then the Rams, like that was the one where like they called, like it was at the pass interference or illegal contact
Gabriel
at
Davis.
the end. And then they got the corner touchdown at the end to win it. So that was a fun year.
What I remember from that game was like all the pent up rage I had being locked in my house during COVID and just unleashing it on the national media, because people like Peter Schrager were like, it's absolutely awful what happened to the LA Rams. That wasn't a whatever, pass interference or defensive contact on the Rams. I can't believe NFL officiating took an opportunity for the Rams to win the game away. And it's like, dude, did you not see the Tyler Croft catch that was an interception a quarter and a half before, and it wouldn't have been a game? The Rams wouldn't have made that comeback without that awful call from NFL officiating. So I still just to this day remember just raging about that one.
I know. Yeah, that was, they just conveniently forgot that part of the game.
All right, let's get into some of the pregame talking points. Let's start with injuries and the weather. Obviously, weather is not a factor. It's not quite a dome in Los Angeles, but the stadium does have a roof. It is absolutely hilarious to me that if there is any lightning in the forecast today and there's a lightning strike in the area, they actually have to delay the game because there technically are patches where it is open air and there is like air that comes into the stadium. So if it were to lightning today in LA, which I don't believe it will, they actually technically do have to delay the game, which I think is hilarious.
I mean, is there forecast for lightning?
I don't know. I didn't even look. I just remember in the preseason watching one of the games and they're like, well, if this band comes in, we might have to delay the game, even though this is an indoor stadium.
Just wild. So you still have to watch out for that, I guess. Yeah. Although I would assume in LA, it's probably not that common, but yeah, I mean, let's just say for the sake of argument, it's going to be pristine conditions. In there.
On the injury front, the Rams, like I said, are getting healthy there without starting tight end Tyler Higbee today and depth offensive lineman KT Levinston. There was an injury that popped up late on the injury report for the Rams. Both of these guys are expected to play, but the big one is Jared Verse with an ankle, and then backup left tackle ARH Jackson. Again, both expected to play. Rather healthy Rams team compared to earlier this season. Like I said, when people were suggesting a Matthew Stafford trade at some point, but Verse injury is a big one. On pace to be defensive rookie of the year, an absolutely phenomenal pass rusher, but the ankle could limit his effectiveness today.
Yeah, and he's really come on as of late. 4.5 sacks for him. That's a really fun young defensive line. Said that after the draft and kind of in my off-season sort of NFL predictions show we do before the season, mentioning the Rams and thinking that defensive line could surprise some people, and they've really been pretty good as the season has gone on. Jared Verse, one of our favorites during the pre-draft process, a potential guy
Mhm.
that was discussed as maybe a trade-up candidate for the Bills during the draft in 2024. Obviously, we discussed many options, but he was on that list of options we discussed. Very good young player. That is a big one. You wonder if that ankle, even if he does play, if it limits his effectiveness at all. As a Bills fan, you kind of hope it does if he does play, because he can be disruptive on the edge. We saw him kind of go toe to toe with some good offensive lines of late. Had some interesting pass rush moves as well. So look, I would be okay if he's a little bit limited with that
Mhm.
ankle. But that is as Patty Brad says, versus Dawkins. That's a fun matchup to watch, and maybe a matchup people aren't really talking about much, but it will
Yeah.
be a fun matchup to watch.
On the Bills' end, out another week is Tillen Grable as he returns from injured reserve. Questionable for the Buffalo Bills is Dalton Kincaid, Keon Coleman, Dwayne Carter, and Quinton Morris. It was either Tom Pelissaro or Ian Rappaport. One of them came out at I don't know, middle of the night and tweeted that Dalton Kincaid is likely not going to play today. So another week of no Dalton Kincaid, and that Keon Coleman is once again a true game time decision. I honestly don't have any faith that we see Kincaid or Coleman until we start to see full practices from them on the injury report. Kincaid does have his brace off, but he has still been limited all week. And Coleman, although he practiced all 3 days, is still in that red non-contact jersey. So I don't think we see either of them today.
Yeah, with the Davidson elevation, I would imagine
Mhm.
that's a
His last
pretty
one
clear.
too.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
last one. That's a pretty clear sign that we're not going to see Kincaid. I wouldn't expect him. I mean, Knox has been filling in just fine for him, and it's just most important to have Kincaid ready for this stretch run. We always kind of said if he was back for that last 3 divisional games to end the season, that would be great. TBD on whether he will even be back for this Lions game a week after this one. Coleman is the one that kind of keeps lingering on, that we feel like maybe even like 2 weeks ago, we thought he could play, um, leading into the bye, then obviously doesn't play. Then coming out of the bye, you thought maybe he had a chance, doesn't play. Uh, that injury seemed to be a bit more severe than maybe it's sort of initially thought to have been, at least, but judging by the amount
Mhm.
of games he's missed. So again, I would imagine the Bills right now, they're playing pretty well on offense as it is. I don't know that it makes a lot of sense to kinda put these guys back on the field if they're not 100% right now, when
Mhm.
at the end of the day, like, you are in the postseason, you're gonna have a home playoff game. Obviously, there's a couple division games here to end the season, and I think most importantly, to have these guys 100% for those last couple games or even the playoffs is the most important thing. So, a non-conference game, maybe not the most important, although it will have a ramification on the Bills potentially getting the 1 seed. Really won't have any ramifications otherwise for tiebreakers, or shouldn't. So that's why I feel like we won't see either of these guys today, and it would not be surprising to me either if these guys both go into next week questionable as game time decisions as well.
Yeah, we got Scott Blakely coming in saying, I have no idea what's going on with Coleman. He must have fractured a bone. Odd they didn't put him on IR initially. And yeah, there's a couple of people who have questioned why Dalton Kincaid, why Keon Coleman were not placed on injured reserve, even though their injuries are lasting longer than this 4-week allotment of if you would have put them on IR. But honestly, at the end of the day, I'm not too mad that neither guy was, IR'd. We clearly didn't need the spots. We've made it through just fine. This is again talking in retrospect too, because other injuries could have occurred that could have changed that, but they still got reps in practice, even though they were limited reps. There might have been genuine hope that they would return, and it truly is a week to week thing, and it's just taking a little bit longer than maybe they had initially thought. And if we had put them on IR, we would have had to put 2 players on our active roster, and then we'd have to be putting those players on waivers, and they might not get their way back to our practice squad. So I think there might have been a number of things that went into the decision not to IR them. And at the end of the day, I really don't think it was that big of a deal. Again, speaking in retrospect, but it doesn't seem to have affected this team too much.
No, and I think those factors all played into it. I do think I would have to think in their heart of hearts they did think these guys would be back sooner than they have been. I really believe that, but when you factor that in, the roster spots, all of that, it really has added up to something where, I mean, you hate to say it, but it hasn't been like too much of a worry with these guys out for as long as they've been, at least to now. Now, not saying you don't want them back, you obviously do, but the Bills have been able to navigate through these
Yeah.
stretch of games without them just fine.
I miss watching these guys play football. Like, I'm still waiting. We're all still waiting for that Dalton Kincaid breakout game, and the less he plays, the obviously the less chance that has of happening or slows down that happening. And it was starting to get real fun watching Keon Coleman play football. And it's now been a couple of weeks without Keon Coleman playing football as well. So less fun for sure. But the Buffalo Bills have certainly survived it. All right, let's talk a little bit now about the Buffalo Bills offense versus this Los Angeles Rams defense. Dave, what does the DVOA tell us about this Rams defense?
Yeah, Rams DVOA defense, 21st overall, 22nd against the pass, 21st against the rush. So their overall pass rush, all right there in the low 20s. As far as passing defense, they're 15th in raw stats against the pass, 22nd in DVOA. So DVOA not really favoring them quite as much here. They've played 3 bottom 6 pass offenses, the Patriots, the Bears, and the Eagles, surprisingly, but that's a bit skewed as well. But they've also played 5 of the top 8 pass offenses in the league: Detroit, Minnesota, San Francisco, Green Bay, and Seattle. And one of the things I think that maybe is hurting them in a bit in this one is they did allow a very big passing day to the Patriots, who are a very bad passing offense overall. And they've allowed the 11th highest completion percentage in the NFL. This team doesn't have a ton of sacks overall as far as their like their whole season is concerned. They're middle of the pack in sacks and both sacks and interceptions. So likely that is also bringing them down a bit. But I do think the completion percentage there, allowing the 11th highest in the NFL, is also hurting them. On the rushing side, this is where it kind of flips a little bit. They're 27th in raw stats against the run, 21st in DVOA. So DVOA actually likes them a bit here. And there's a story behind this. They played 5 of the top 7 rushing offenses in the NFL: Eagles, Niners, Packers, Lions, and Cardinals. They've also played the Saints, who are 10th in the NFL in rushing, and the Patriots, who are 12th in the NFL in rushing. So they've played pretty much the best rushing offenses in the league. Now, they have struggled as of late. They gave up that massive 300-plus rushing yard effort to Philadelphia a couple weeks ago. They gave up 143 on the ground to the Saints last week, and that was without Taysom Hill, by the way. So not exactly trending in the right ways. They've allowed an average of 194 rushing yards per game over their last 3 weeks. So the rushing defense, a bit suspect right now for the LA Rams, and it's kind of showing you that both in the DVOA and in the raw statistics. So again, we talk about these pass rushing weapons that the Rams have. Could be another James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson type of day here to exploit some of this run defense on the Rams side. So you look at the DVOA, that's where the DVOA is telling you to attack this team.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at their depth chart and I look at some of their tendencies as well. I mean, they just have a genuinely young and talented arsenal of pass rushers and a pretty awesome young defensive line, even though they are young. And as you mentioned, they do have some issues in run defense. But I mean, Braden Fiskey, Kobe Turner, Byron Young, Jared Verse, all draft picks, all young, all get after it. They got Michael Hoke as well. They can generate pressure on the quarterback. Even though like their sack numbers aren't there, their pressure rate, I believe, is the highest in the National Football League. They can pressure the quarterback without blitzing, which is a good thing for them because Josh Allen absolutely destroys the blitz. Per SIS, they are 7th in the NFL in too high shell. They are 7th in the use of light boxes. They are 10th in the use of zone coverage. They are 6th in the NFL in the use of a 3-man rush, 14th in the NFL in the use of a 4-man rush, and all the way down at 25th in blitz percentage. This is a team that relies on their defensive line to get after it, and they drop everybody else back into coverage. So to me, if I'm Joe Brady, heavy dose of early runs and quick hitters, keep the Buffalo Bills out of those down and distance situations where Josh Allen might be susceptible to getting some pressure in his face with that young pass rush.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, look, the Rams, you mentioned they kind of drop back into coverage. They're bottom half of the NFL in third down conversion percentage allowed. Teams are 7 for 10 going for it against the Rams on fourth downs, which is the third worst in the NFL. So there's going to be opportunities, I think you're right, for that quick passing game and the running game to kind of keep these chains moving. And the Bills have really improved their third down offense in recent weeks. Going back really to the Seattle game is where it really all started. They were bottom 10 in the NFL in third down offense as recently as the end of that Titans game. And so they've really turned it around. I think they're seventh or eighth now in the NFL in third down conversion. They were first, obviously, last year. We've talked about that a lot. So that's going to be a big storyline as well today is like that Rams defense and sort of relying on that defensive line. Can the Bills keep moving the chains? They've been really good at it lately. Need to keep that Rams defense on the field and convert on third downs.
The linebackers for the Rams and nickel corner Quentin Lake, in my opinion, can be exploited. I still do not understand the Ernest Jones trade that they made so late in the offseason. I understand they weren't going to give him a second contract, but they should have just let him play out his contract, and they should have then collected the compensatory draft pick. Just kind of a baffling move from the Rams organization there. League worst EPA per play defending the run against defending running backs as receivers out of the backfield. So again, you sort of mentioned this already. James Cook, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, not just as runners, but as pass catchers, need to be a focus of this Buffalo Bills offense today. And I'm going to throw Khalil Shakir in there as we always do. And Dawson Knox is there as well. Like, attack the middle of the football field, attack those linebackers, attack those nickel corners. I think their safeties and Cam Curl and Cam Kitchens, they've sort of been up and down a little bit this year based on some of the reports and the things that I've read from some people. But on paper, that's a draft pick that I know a lot of people in the draft community liked, and a free agent that a lot of people liked. So, but the linebackers, the nickel corners, to me, that's something you can exploit.
You can exploit it. I mean, you mentioned the running backs out of the backfield. I think that could be big today on the nice, pristine conditions there on the fast turf. Continuing on DVOA, the Rams are 25th against running backs as pass catchers out of the backfield in DVOA. So it's an area where they struggle a bit. Last week could have been an even bigger week for Alvin Kamara had he not had a few drops against that Rams defense. The Saints had him set up for some big plays, and he had a couple drops out of the backfield. So that's an area I definitely would look to exploit. I think James Cook, you can turn on the tape from as recently as last week and see what the Saints were doing to this Rams defense, and you could use James Cook in a very similar way. It was very effective. Kamara ran well. He was getting open out of the backfield. The screen game was working for them. I know the Bills don't use a ton of screens, but maybe sprinkle one or two in today, especially against that young, sort of aggressive defensive line. I think it's an area where you can take advantage.
Yeah, and it wouldn't shock me too if we're looking for maybe a new wrinkle from this Buffalo Bills team. Maybe we see Curtis Samuel get some of those running backs and catching out of the backfield looks again. It was something that it looked like the Bills wanted to do in the beginning of the season. It was something that the Bills definitely looked like they wanted to do in training camp. And then obviously things happened. Curtis Samuel was clearly dinged. The offense was struggling. That wasn't working. Maybe the Buffalo Bills try to get Curtis Samuel, if he's healthier, back to sort of being a yak dude, and try to get him not just the ball down the field, but try to get him in some of these situations to match him up on a linebacker out of the backfield.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see that a bit. I think you can definitely be a bit more creative today, knowing that like you're not going to have to worry about snow or wind or anything like that. I think that it will help as far as maybe trying some things out that you haven't tried yet. And Curtis Samuel really, I think in the last couple weeks, like maybe the volume hasn't exactly been where fans have been hoping, but he's certainly been more involved in the last few weeks than he had been early in the season. And he looks healthy. As of late as well. And I think that's the big thing too for him. So with him healthy, we are assuming that he was a little bit banged up early in the year, even though he wasn't necessarily on the injury report. He certainly looks healthier as of late. I think that would be another reason. Again, you're not going to have Kincaid in this game. A lot of the focus for the Rams will be on Shakir. So it certainly makes sense, I think, if you can get Samuel some manufactured touches that way.
Smaller corners for the Rams and Williams and Durant. So maybe Keon Coleman does get his shot today, and the Buffalo Bills look to get him maybe in some contested catch situations. And I think maybe this is the game where you see Amari Cooper down the field a little bit more as well. And the Buffalo Bills try to get or draw up some shot plays to Amari Cooper. And Matt Collins can always be a factor sort of out of structure as well against some of those smaller corners. So the Bills do have some bigger receivers on their roster, especially if Coleman plays. That could be a matchup benefit with the smaller corners of the Rams as well.
I mean, I saw someone in the comment section put something like this could be like 125 and 2 TDs for Cooper. I mean, this could be a Cooper breakout game. It really could. There it is. No bones about it. 125, 2 TDs. Yeah, I think this definitely could be a Cooper breakout type of game. I'm not going to be upset if it doesn't happen because I think the Bills can win in a variety of ways today, but it would not surprise me if this was a little bit of a coming out party for Amari Cooper today, especially after last week with like the attention they got on that lateral play. And obviously Josh got most of the attention there, but Cooper really kind of did his part there. It'd be nice to kind of maybe see him a bit more involved in the passing game today.
No bones about it. Comes in, says Rams defense is terrible against the screen game. Well, the Bills aren't really very good at running screens, but quick hitters to Khalil Shakir, maybe even getting Curtis Samuel involved in those quick hitters. Those are all things I can see the Buffalo Bills doing today to try to exploit the linebackers in the nickel corner of the LA Rams. Carl Thoman, we're going to get to your super chat in just one moment when we transition to the Buffalo. Oh, actually, no, we're on the Buffalo Bills offense. I take it back, Carl. So we're going to get your super chat now. I'm a little out of sorts this morning, but Carl comes in and says, versus Kansas City, Josh had the 4th and 2 touchdown run versus San Francisco, and he had the pass that he also received on the lateral from Amari Cooper for a touchdown. What MVP moment will Josh make today? A 70-yard in the air pass to Amari, possibly. Yeah, it's really interesting. That's sort of what the MVP is now. You got to be on a winning team. You got to be the quarterback of said winning team, unless you're doing something extraordinary like Saquon Barkley. You got to be on like the 1 or 2 seed. You got to be doing something extraordinary, and you got to have those flashing moments. Like Lamar had like pedestrian numbers last year, but he was on a really good team and he had some really big games late in the season. So if you're Josh Allen and that MVP is something you really care about, having some big games down the stretch here and making some memorable plays down the stretch here will be important. And hopefully Amari Cooper really gets going today. That will be fun to watch as well. Overall, if on the Buffalo Bills, utilize the run game, as we said, and quick hitters to just get yourself into these 3rd and short situations. Calculate your shot plays, get the ball downfield to guys like Amari Cooper. Rely again on the yards after the catch ability of guys like James Cook, of guys like I'm blanking, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel. And I'd like to see a lot of play action stuff. If you can get in a 2nd and short, play action, under center stuff, slow down, stymie their pass rush, and get those shots down the field if you're the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I mean, I think the play action game should be a focus today. I think knowing that the Rams have been susceptible against the run as of late, especially in their last 3 games, James Cook coming off that big game, obviously in the snow, it should be effective. And I know the story around play action is you don't necessarily have to be effectively running the ball for play action to work, but I do think that the Bills will be or should be effective running the ball. So I do think it will help incrementally more that they will be able to run the ball or should be able to run the ball better. And would not surprise me if that play action game was used a little bit more today. You see Josh under center maybe a little bit more than you have. Obviously, the snow game was a bit of an anomaly, but it would not. I will say this: if I'm Joe Brady, I wouldn't mind throwing a little bit of that more into the game plan today.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, like Elvis comes in and says, do the Rams play more man or zone? Had that statistic at the top of the segment here. 7th in the NFL in 2 high shell, 7th in the use of light box, 10th in the NFL in the use of zone coverage, 6th in 3-man rush, 14th in 4-man rush, and only 25th in blitz percentage. So sort of the last talking point here for me, they rely on this defensive line the Rams do because this defensive line is good. We talk
Mhm.
about playoff caliber tests. I don't know so much if the back seven is a playoff caliber test for the Buffalo Bills, but I think the front seven of the LA Rams is a playoff caliber test for this Buffalo Bills offensive line. So really going to be paying close attention to how the offensive line handles the pass rush in these down and distance situations, and how and if they help the Buffalo Bills get themselves into these second and short situations, looking for that push on the offensive line. So the offensive line, big test for them today. Playoff caliber test.
Playoff caliber test. It reminds me a little bit of the Seattle game. We went into that Seattle game sort of praising the young defensive line of the Seattle Seahawks on the road, and the offensive line really answered the call in that game. So I think this may be even a bit of a tougher test potentially today for the Bills offensive line, but they've answered the call lately, and I think that it will be important. I mean, we're kind of in the point now where we've seen so many good games out of this offensive line that we kind of maybe assume that they're going to dominate or at least play above average. And so every week's a new week. You have to kind of reprove yourself. So yeah, it's important for this offensive line again today.
You mentioned Seattle. Literally no one has blocked Leonard Williams since the Buffalo
Yeah.
Bills played the Seattle Seahawks. That guy has been on an absolute tear.
Terror.
So kudos to the Buffalo Bills for being able to shut him down because he was doing it in the weeks leading up to the game. The Bills kind of slowed him down a little bit, and then he has just been on he's been an absolute menace in the week since they played the Buffalo Bills. So kudos to the Bills offensive line for that one. All right, shifting our focus now to the Los Angeles Rams offense, therefore the Buffalo Bills defense. Looking at this Rams offense, Dave, their MO is their ability to run 11 personnel all game, but to do it with physicality. A bunch of people have mentioned sort of the condensed formations, and they're able to do that because Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, they are physical and they are great wide receivers, but they can also get after it in the run game. Kyrie and Williams can get it done on the ground. Their offensive line is fully healthy. They got Joseph Noteboom, Avila, Jackson, Dotson, Havenstein. Like, they are strong up the middle of that offensive line. And of course, it is all orchestrated by Super Bowl winner, savvy veteran, big armed Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay. What does the DVOA tell us about this Rams offense?
Yeah, and I'll just say, like, I've been a Matthew Stafford fan for so long. I just love the way that guy plays. But yeah, Rams offense 12th overall in DVOA, 11th in pass, 12th in rush. So a similar story as far as on the defense, like very condensed as far as the rankings here. Better on offense than they are on defense. So 12th overall, 11th against the or 11th in passing, 12th in rushing. On the passing side, they're 11th in raw statistics and 11th in DVOA. So we have perfect alignment here. They've been under 200 passing yards in 2 straight games, but really a little bit of that is context. We know last week that Kyron Williams really was effective against the Saints, and they really kind of took it to the Saints on the ground last week. They played 2 of the top 4 pass defenses in San Francisco and Philadelphia, as well as the 11th and 12th ranked pass defenses in Chicago and Seattle. Prior to these last 2 games where they kind of didn't pass as much, they had 4 straight games of 257 plus passing yards. And obviously, you mentioned them getting healthier over the course of, the middle of the season. Them getting both Nacua and Kupp back together on the field at the same time has been huge for them in that passing game. So a really good passing offense here, 11th in DVOA. On the rushing side, this is where we have some quite a bit of divergence. So they're 26th in raw stats. They're only averaging just about 100 yards per game, but they're 12th in DVOA. They've been held under 100 rushing yards in 6 of 12 games, but they've played 4 of the top 10 rushing defenses. Minnesota, who's first, Detroit, Philly, and Green Bay. They've played others in the top half as well, including Arizona and San Francisco, who are within their division. They did have over 100 rushing yards against Minnesota, which was probably arguably their best game of the year. Their best win of the year was against the Vikings. They had over 100 rushing yards against Green Bay, and they were just under 100 against Philadelphia. So the DVOA is kind of helping them out there, averaging 118.3 rushing yards per game over their past 3 games, where their season average is only a little over 100. So about 20 more yards per game over their last 3 games. So again, this is a rushing offense that you mentioned. That offensive line is healthy. The Bills in that defensive interior really need to have a good day today. Kyron Williams has been super effective. He's third in the NFL in rushing. Fourth in the NFL in rushing right now. And he has the fourth most rush attempts and fifth in
Mhm.
rushing yards. So he has to be priority number one. Their rushing offense tells a different story in DVOA than it does in the raw statistics if you're just to look at that. So I would say, in looking at the DVOA and just looking at Kyron Williams and the effectiveness of
Mhm.
this run game, is this is a better running team, and the DVOA supports this than the raw statistics would tell you. And I think most Bills fans would agree that it needs to be a good day for that interior defensive line and slowing down Kyron Williams.
Yeah, this offense is finally healthy, so I think you're going to see the best version of this offense, the final stretch run of the season here for the LA Rams. Someone mentioned in the comment section earlier they've only scored 30-plus points one time, but this has been a pretty banged-up offense. Beginning of the year was the offensive line, then Kupp, and then Nakua, and Stafford was dealing with some stuff. They're finally getting healthy. I picked the Rams to win the NFC West in our preseason prediction show, and my reasoning behind it was this offensive line, especially on the interior with Avila, Jackson, Dotson, is just so powerful. And you got Kyrene running the ball up the middle. I thought Blake Corum would be more of a factor for this team this year. Running the ball, I thought you'd see more of a split backfield between Kyrene and Blake Corum. You have not seen that. It has been, as you mentioned, the Kyrene Williams show. And then just the physicality to get after it with Nakua and Kupp. And they got some good changeups in guys like Tutu Atwell and Demarcus Robinson as well. Not having Tyler Higbee hurts them a little bit, I think, in the run game, but they got some other guys like Davis Allen who have stepped up. But to me, I think you're just going to see the Rams just try to run straight at the Buffalo Bills today. And it's going to be really interesting to see how the Buffalo Bills handle the physicality that they're going to see from this Rams offensive line. It's going to be really interesting to see, as Aaron Quinn likes to point out, like the teams run on the Bills between the 20s, but they don't seem to be able to finish those drives. I think the Rams with Kupp, Nakua, and that powerful offensive line, this is a team that can finish in the red zone. And the data might not support that right now, but they have not been the best versions of themselves due to injury. So I think this is going to be a really interesting test for the Buffalo Bills today. I think people are sleeping on this Rams offense a little bit. I think they match up really well with the Buffalo Bills defense.
Yeah, I think it's a great matchup for the Rams offense, to be honest. And I think that one of the things that Aaron mentioned just now in the comment section is like people want to talk about like the safety play and like the loss of Hyde and Poyer and some of the things that people will point out around Hamlin and Rapp. But at the end of the day, I do think the IDL has been the weakest link of this defense, especially just like with teams running the ball up the middle. Not to mention this, they just haven't been great at generating pressure either from the interior. So to me, the weakest link is sort of where the Rams maybe strength is right now. And that kind of scares me a bit going into this game, that Kyron Williams can kind of control this game on the ground, limit the number of possessions the Bills get. I know Sean McVay is going to use the play action. We know that has been at times an Achilles heel for the Bills as well, in some of the misdirection that they've fallen for. So I don't think it's a great matchup for the Bills against this Rams run game. But like you said, like that was a worry of mine against the Colts as well. The Bills gave up the one big run to Jonathan Taylor and kind of stiffened in the red zone and didn't allow too much else other than that. But I think this is a little bit of a different beast today, because I do think that the Rams have more of a threat in the passing game than the Colts did. So I am worried a bit that this becomes a game where you see fewer possessions for this Bills offense. But yeah, I would say this is a good matchup for the Rams up the middle.
Yeah. Just Mort comes in and says Rams rushing attack will be frustrating for a quarter and a half until Buffalo offense hits its stride and takes a lead. Charles G comes in and says Rams want to run the rock. Here's the thing. You can't do that when getting blown out by Josh and Co. 100%, right? Like if the Buffalo Bills offense steps up, and they typically do, we've scored 30+ points, 9 times this season. If the Buffalo Bills come in and do what they do and they execute and they take advantage of what I don't think is the greatest back seven in the world for the LA Rams, and they, score a couple of quick touchdowns early in this football game, then I 100% agree. Like a lot of this is moot because it's going to take the Rams out of their comfort zone. They're going to have to pass the ball a ton. And the Rams in a shootout compared to the Rams in sort of a grinded out game, I think are two different types of football teams. But there are some days where maybe the offense just doesn't have it, right? Like the offense struggles a little bit to start, and this is a close game or a tight game going into halftime, going into the second half. And it might depend on whether the Buffalo Bills won the toss and deferred and we get a chance to double dip, and all those other very different variables come into play as well. So it all depends, I think, on the start of this game. So some really interesting points, because how this game starts could dictate how this game is played. The first quarter could dictate the other three quarters because it could be a totally different game depending on whether the Buffalo Bills can get a couple of quick hitters.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see, like, I mean, I would, of course, defer if I win the toss, but it'll be interesting to see if the Rams maybe try to take the ball first. I know that's not typically something they would do, but, you know, if I was them, I would consider it, taking the ball first and trying to establish that running game and try to throw that first punch, right? Get that first touchdown and kind of put you ahead of, ahead of the script, so to speak. So it'll be interesting too, I think, to see sort of how the situations play out, like the 2 minutes before the half and sort of the double dip scenario, who's going to be double dipping, and those types of things could play a factor into sort of, again, how many possessions this Bills team has, how much the Rams can stick to their game plan, and so on. So a bit of a chess match here between the two Seans.
I think this is a good test for our defensive line too. I mean, will the real Ed Oliver please stand up? I mean, he has struggled all year. You sort of talked about that at the beginning of this segment, but he did step up in the Chiefs game, right? So like maybe some of these bigger games is where you're going to see Ed Oliver for some reason seem to pop a little bit. So the real Ed Oliver, can you stand up in this game? And the Buffalo Bills got to figure out that defensive tackle rotation. Dwayne Carter, he is questionable for this game. I'm hoping that he plays and he's part of this rotation today. And it's going to be interesting to see how those reps shake out, because between Carter, Jordan Phillips, Quentin Jefferson, Austin Johnson, and Ed Oliver, Buffalo Bills got to figure out what works and what doesn't as they head into the home stretch here. And Rousseau, Miller, you can even throw Epinesa in there as well. It's going to be interesting to see. I think the Rams have a good offensive line. Is the pass rush still effective against what I think is a pretty good playoff caliber offensive line for the Buffalo Bills, or for the Los Angeles Rams? Excuse me. Sorry.
Yeah, the pass rush is going to be interesting today, right? Because the Bills are really going to need to do a good job in trying to get into long down and distances, and that starts with stopping Williams on early downs, right? I think that if they can get the Rams into some third and longs, like that will give them a chance to kind of unleash these pass rushers, where we know, like, hey, Matthew Stafford hasn't been really sacked a ton this year. He's like middle of the pack in sack. Like, they've done a pretty good job in keeping him upright, and he's not obviously the most mobile guy. So a big test for the Bills defensive line, not just on the interior and stopping the run, but also the pass rush.
Fun matchup between Christian Benford, Rasul Douglas, two guys who can handle physicality as corners. Taron Johnson we can throw in there as well, against Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. This is a matchup that I think the Bills can handle that other teams might not be able to handle, because their cornerbacks aren't as physical as Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is another one of those fun matchups, right? Where we talked about like a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about like the slot corners of the Colt, like with the Colts and the Bills, and against the slot receivers. This is a fun matchup this week with the boundary receivers against the strength. Really, one of the biggest strengths of the Bills defense is the boundary corners. So Douglas against Nacua, I would expect to see that matchup a ton today. Benford against Nacua, I would expect to see that as well. Taron Johnson's going to have his fair share of Cooper Kupp, I'm sure, as he kind of moves around the formation a ton for the Rams. They use him in motion a ton. They also use Nacua in motion a lot as well. So yeah, it'll be a good test for this Bills secondary. Didn't really get tested last week, obviously, in the snow. Against the Chiefs, tested a little bit. Like, they had the big play to Worthy that was out of bounds. Like, there were some plays that the Chiefs could have had, but the Bills overall did a good job against Hopkins and Worthy. So it's different stylistically against Nacua and Kupp, a little bit more physical style for those guys. So I think they'll be up to the task, but I mean, I think Nacua and Kupp will still get there, maybe better than some other receiving tandems have against the Bills this season.
Couple of final things to keep an eye on this week on the defensive side of the ball. Week 2 of the Matt Milano return. So
Mhm.
seeing as he continues to progress and he continues to come back from that biceps injury, and the status of Taylor Rapp. I know he was not listed, not given a designation, but he's dealing with neck and shoulder stuff. Could there be a point in this game where Cole Bishop has to get some burn? So just keeping an eye on Taylor Rapp and his status as the game progresses as well, because he likes to play physical. He likes to play aggressive. He likes to get after it. One wrong hit with a neck and shoulder injury, and Cole Bishop could be out in the field for the Buffalo Bills.
Right, and that's yeah. I think seeing how much Milano played last week, they were probably pretty happy with the health right of him. So look, I know Taylor Rapp having no designation is huge, and his style is just going to lend itself to sometimes getting on the injury report. I don't want to say reckless. He's not reckless, but he is aggressive. And so he is not afraid to put himself in harm's way. You know what? I respect that about him. And so he should be good to go. Again, maybe a revenge game for him, right? Former team. So yeah, I'm excited, and I think he's been playing really well, and probably a guy that maybe got a lot of flack going into the season, but I think has really risen to the occasion this year.
All right, now it is time for our pre-game superlatives. First up, as always, we have our Take Me Higher player of the game. As always, in the comment section, let us know your Take Me Higher player of the game. This is a player not named Josh Allen that needs to step up for the Buffalo Bills, big name player for the Buffalo Bills that needs to step up in order for the Bills to have success today against the Los Angeles Rams. Dave, who's your Take Me Higher player of the game this week?
Yeah, it was a bit of a dicey start for this guy last week, but really came through after that missed field goal on the very next play, the 65-yard touchdown run. To me, it's James Cook today, the Take Me Higher player. You're going to have Kyren Williams on the other side, who I expect will be effective against this Bills defensive line. I think James Cook to try to go toe-to-toe with Kyren and doing his own thing in the running game. I would like to see Cook a little bit more involved in the passing game this week. I think in recent weeks, maybe not as involved against the Chiefs. He got some targets, but was very limited in the yardage. Kudos to the Chiefs on that. But I think today you could see a bit more yardage from James Cook in the passing game. I think he has a chance to be effective in the running game as well. So I'm going to say James Cook today is a Take Me Higher player for the Bills.
Tom Ottersberg comes in and says, Ed Oliver needs to step up. It's time. Just Mort says, Coop. Michael L comes in and says, Curtis Samuel. Let's save that one for wild card. All right. I don't think Curtis Samuel has earned a Take Me Higher yet. And then Scott Blakely comes in and says, Oliver, Take Me Higher. Hey, just show the F up at this point would be nice. I have the same name as you as my Take Me Higher player. And I've made him my Take Me Higher, the player of the game, probably like 15 times this year. And that's James Cook. And I really do think he is one of the engines of our offense. And I think it's more maybe just the Bills' philosophy this year of not wanting to get in obvious passing situations and the strength of this Buffalo Bills being the offensive line. So I don't want to say it's all James Cook, but James Cook is clearly showing that he is a really, really good football player. And he's taking advantage of the shift in offensive philosophy and the great offensive line the Buffalo Bills have, and the fact that Josh Allen is a way bigger distraction for opposing defensive coordinators. This is a game plan where you don't want to get yourself into obvious passing downs. This is a game where you can take advantage of the receivers out of the backfield. They are worst in EPA per play defending receivers out of the backfield. This is the game where you're going to want to run the ball on early downs. I think James Cook is going to get himself 18 to 25 touches via the running and the passing game. I think he's going to go for 150 plus yards from scrimmage. And I think you could see another game where he maybe has 2 touchdowns and starts to get into the Raheem Mostert of last year territory of pushing 20 touchdowns. Like, I think you could see that from a James Cook today. I think he's going to be the engine that drives this Buffalo Bills offense. All right. Up next is our wild card player of the game. This is where I think maybe a name like Curtis Samuel could come into play. People have mentioned in the comment section how much the Rams struggle in the screen games with the Buffalo Bills are looking for quick hitters. Maybe Curtis Samuel enters the backfield. Maybe Curtis Samuel gets some of those quick hitters that also go to Khalil Shakir a ton. Dawson Knox, baby, Chris S says. Where are you leaning, Dave?
I'm going back to the well with where I went last week. I had Knox last week as my wild card. I'm going to go Knox again this week. To me, there's going to be advantages you can have against these linebackers in coverage. I do think that the quick passing game, maybe a little bit to neutralize some of that pass rush from the Rams, could be used in today's game. I'm not going to say it's going to be huge volume like it never really is with Dawson Knox, but he had a huge 40-yard catch coming out of the Bills' own end zone last week. I wouldn't be surprised if he had one or two big plays in this game as well to help the Bills maybe either flip the field or in the red zone or something of that nature. So I'll say Dawson Knox is my wild card player for today.
Yeah, I'm going to go on the defensive side of the ball. I think Scott Blakely coming in here late with Ray Davis is a good one. Just Mort said Matt Collins. EB said Alec Anderson. All good ones, all fit into the category. I'm going to go Dwayne Carter. How about this, right? The Buffalo Bills need somebody to step up on the interior of that defensive line. If Dwayne Carter plays today, this is one of the downsides of having these 8 a.m. shows, right?
Yep.
If Dwayne Carter plays today, which I think he will, I'd like to see him make a play or two because I think he was really coming on right when he suffered that wrist injury. He made some big plays in the Texans game. He made some other big plays as well. I think he was responsible for that 4th down stop against the Tennessee Titans that really flipped that game around. So Dwayne Carter is going to be my wild card player of the game. Welcome back, Dwayne. And then now we are on to our Respect You player of the game. Just More comes in real quick and says that the Bills shuffled their roster to make room for Carter. They waived Nicholas Morrow. My guess is if he clears waivers, he will become a veteran on the practice squad. I believe we still have room for that as well. So that was the roster transaction. The Bills have one more week to make a decision on Till and Grable, and they'll have to cut actually, at this time of year, you have to waive someone. When he returns as well. But on to our Respect You player of the game. Dave, who is your Respect You player of the game?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've been talking about this guy for a lot of the show and just worries me a lot against this Bills interior defensive line. I'm saying Kyren Williams. I think that people aren't really talking about him as having a great season, but like I said before, he's 4th in the NFL in rushing attempts, 5th in yards. He is a threat out of the backfield to catch passes as well. He maybe is underappreciated as one of the better starting sort of workhorse type running backs in the NFL. You mentioned you thought we'd see Corum more involved. He really hasn't been. It's kind of been a one-man show for the LA Rams this year with Williams. And obviously he has a nose for the end zone, just like James Cook does. These are two guys that have really found the end zone a ton this year. So for me, against that Bills interior defensive line, I'm going to say Kyren Williams is my Respect You player.
Yeah, I mean, Kyren Williams is a good one, and there's a lot of players on that Rams offense. Matthew Stafford, just being the savvy veteran leader that he is and quarterback that he is, Nakua Kupp. It's hard not to pick any of those guys, but I'm not going to pick any of those guys. I'm just going to flat out say it. It's the offensive and defensive lines of the LA Rams. We both talked at the beginning of the show how much if they weren't playing the Bills that we root for the Rams. And it's easy to root for the Rams because you look at it like Fiske, Turner, Young, Verse. Those guys are all like just young, go get after the quarterback type of defensive linemen that are easy to root for.
Yep.
And then you look at their offensive line, finally healthy. Noteboom at left tackle is what he is, but Avila, Jackson, Dodson, Havenstein, like that's a really solid foundational offensive line. Like the Bills have their foundational offensive line with which everything we do flows through on offense now. The Rams have that as well, and they're starting to gel because they haven't all been healthy this year. So I think the offensive and defensive line of the Rams cannot be slept on. I think if they show up and they dominate the lines of scrimmages, it could be a longer day for the Buffalo Bills than many fans anticipate. All right. Now on to our hottest take from this game or for this game. All right, Dave, what is your hottest take for this football game?
Yeah, my hot take for this game, I think, look, the Bills have been really good on fourth downs this year. The Rams have not been great at defending fourth downs. I think this is a game the Rams really want to have in that race for the NFC West. I think both teams are going to be very aggressive today on fourth downs. My hot take is you see a combined 7+ fourth down attempts from the teams. Make it 8. Make it 8. Make it a hotter take. 8 combined fourth down attempts for these teams today. I don't know what the conversion rate's going to be, but I'm expecting both teams to be super aggressive, pristine conditions inside. Sean McVay keeping his team in that playoff mix for the NFC West. Sean McDermott trusting his team to kind of get it done and wanting to score touchdowns today against the Rams team that they might struggle a bit with in defending the run. So 8 combined fourth down attempts for these teams today.
Your take is certainly hotter than mine. Before I share mine, Scott Blakely comes in and says, at all over 3 sacks. Mine's kind of basic today. Zach Davidson, first career NFL touchdown.
Oh, I like that.
So I think he catches one today. I'm not a big, I don't have a lot of respect for that back seven of the Rams. I think the Buffalo Bills get into a red zone situation. You've already seen like a couple of times this year, they've tried to target Zach Davidson in the red zone, just hasn't clicked. I think today it's going to click and the Bills find Zach Davidson in the end zone for his first career touchdown. All right. Now it is time for our pre-game prediction. All right, Dave, take us back to the future. Paint a picture for us. How's this game going to shake out?
I think the Bills lose the toss today. They take the ball first, maybe slow out of the gates a little bit on the offense, maybe a field goal attempt on the first drive, keeps the Rams in the game for about a quarter and a half, maybe through the first half. But I do think eventually the Bills offense really will find their way in this game. I think that the matchup is good really for both offenses in this game and what the teams do well. I think the Rams will be able to run the ball. I think the Bills will continue their efficient third down conversion rate. Although it might be a little slow out of the gate in the first quarter, I do think they get it going eventually. And I think it will be eventually too much for the Rams, and the Bills will take them out of their game script by the third, maybe mid-third quarter, to where the Rams kind of go back into sort of pass happy mode to get back into the game. So I'll say the Bills end up winning this game 27-17, pulling away at the end.
I'll tell you what, I'm a little less positive. I don't know. I just have a feeling like this is going to be a closer game than people think. I think just maybe this might be a West Coast trip. Maybe this is the Bills struggle to execute a little bit early on in the game. I'm going Bills 23, Rams 17. I think it's going to be a grinded out game. I don't think we're going to end up seeing as many points scored as we think. And I think the Bills defense comes up with a stop of the Rams on the final drive to seal it in anxiety inducing fashion.
Of course. It's never easy.
Aaron Quinn comes in and says, ultimately, I think the Bills get to Stafford and the Rams don't get to Allen. That's a hot take because I do think the Rams have some really good pass rushers. But again, we talked about all the things the Buffalo Bills offense has to do to stymie that pass rush. Don't put Josh Allen in these obvious passing down situations. Utilize the play action, run the ball on first down, get in those second and third and shorts. So it'll be really interesting for the Buffalo Bills today. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here on the pregame show. Again, if you want to help us out here at the Air Raid Hour, a couple of things you can do. You can like this. That's the easiest thing you can do, right? That's tier one of being a fan of the Air Raid Hour. Just smash that like button. Tier 2 would be hitting that share button and sharing out the link to the show on your socials or texting it to a friend, etc. That really goes a long way as well. And then tier 3, I don't know. I don't think we have a tier 3. I think tier 3 is just being here, being present, being in the moment. We always appreciate you guys in the comment section. You guys bring it. And again, every week we have our show notes but we always go off in various different directions because of the comments and the segments and the things that you guys talk about in the comment section. So we appreciate you guys so much. Our next show will be tomorrow night at 9. Hopefully it will be a victory Monday and we'll be celebrating. And then don't forget, Aaron and Greg are live after the game on the Cover One postgame show. So thank you guys so much. And until next time, Dave, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comment section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!